issues. I do a lot of coaching of principals. I'm coaching about 15 principals right now, including one in South Africa, which is interesting, but I'm not doing any traveling at this point. And I do feel the pain of all the people and also the elation of all the people who are on the front lines, who are doing this work. And it's such an incredibly difficult year. And my heart goes out to all of you. And I salute your courage and hanging in there in this year. I do think there's hope on the way. The cavalry is thundering over the horizon, but it's going to be a while. It's going to be a tough winter. Both of my children are teachers, one in Boston Public Schools, 7th grade. She's actually not doing too badly with a remote, and our son in Seattle teaching history is hating being cooped up in his apartment, but hanging in there and teaching current events. How about that? Can you imagine teaching current events this year? So the third half of my life is the Marshall Memo, which I've been doing for 17 plus years. Every week I sit down and read everything that comes across my doorstep, 60 publications, and then I write on Monday, and then my wife helps me edit and I send it out. And if you're at the end of the alphabet, you haven't gotten it yet, you'll get it this afternoon. But basically it gets me thinking about all the research and keeps me on top of the thinking that's going on around the world in education. And I put together this presentation a few years ago and I keep modifying it. And so let me share my screen and to take a look at some slides. And I also want you to please get your cell phone out, because we're going to do a quick poll in just a moment to help us zero in on the things that are most relevant to you. So basically, I've got a list of 8 beliefs that I've noticed in my career in the last 51 years that have sort of shifted from when I was a student to when I was a teacher, to when I was a principal, and now that I'm a sort of consultant type person. So I want to read the list, and as I go down this list, think of the ones that are most relevant to you right now. And in just a moment, we're going to do a poll on your cell phone so we can zero in on maybe the 4 that are the most relevant, and we can spend more time rather than trying to go through all 8. So the first negative belief that's out there is intelligence, talent are fixed at birth. You either have it or you don't. Second one is poverty is destiny. It's just an inexorable process. The third is great teachers that they just have it naturally rather than being developed. The fourth one is principals are managers. Forget this instructional leadership jazz. Are you kidding? You just run the building. Keep it safe. The fifth is teacher evaluation has never helped at all. It's kind of a waste of our time. Student feedback. Some people are doing a lot of student polling, but some people are skeptical and cynical about this. They're kids, maybe college students, but not kids, K to 12 kids. Number 7 is tests are tests, and they really are a waste of time. And I actually happen to live in Massachusetts, which is the world capital of anti-testing people. Alfie Kohn and Debbie Meyer and all kinds of people have been very articulate in really sort of slamming tests. And finally, this idea of holding teachers accountable for their learning. Nah, you can't do that. Okay, so I've stated the negative of each one of these. So think about these. But first of all, grab your cell phone, please. And I want to model a poll everywhere, which is one of a number of things. Please go to your texting feature on your cell phone. And as if you're sending a new text, you're going to write 37607 in the to box. So right here, just write 37607 or type, excuse me. And then the message is going to be Kim Marshall 346. And don't worry about capitals. So go ahead and put 37607 in the to box, Kim Marshall 346 in the message box, and hit send. And that will register you and enable you to participate in the initial poll. So we're going to prioritize, and then in subsequent questions that I'm going to ask in this 40 minutes. Anyone having any difficulty with this, just unmute yourself and speak up, because there is an alternative route, but texting is the easiest and the most effective. Any issues with this? 37607 in the to. Kim Marshall 346 in the message, hit send, and you should get an immediate little message saying, Mark, did you get that message back? Wendy, did you get that message back? I see Wendy's face there. Thumbs up. I don't want to move on too fast.
And I did get the message. I got it, Kim. And for those of you who are kind of shy about talking online, you can use the chat feature as well. Just let us know and we'll help you.
Mark, if you want to put that in the chat, perhaps the 37607, and just so if there are any late arrivals. Okay, so now we got these 8 things that I just ran through. So you have 4 votes. If you think intelligence in talent or fixed at birth is one of the big issues, and you're just put A and hit send and text A. So just do 1 letter at a time, and you got 4 votes. So this will help us to zero in on the 4 of these 8 that are the biggest top of mind things for you. Okay, now you see the votes coming in from all over the country, perhaps out of the country too. And
now, what if none of these fit your mode of thinking?
Well, if you've mastered these, and all 8 of them are not an issue in your school, well, then you just sit back and enjoy the conversation, Leslie. But I'm sure that maybe among some students or among some faculty members, there are some of these negative beliefs, and I'm gonna talk back to each one of them. Of course, I will give counter arguments to every single one of them. But I'd be amazed, Leslie, if at least one of them isn't an issue in your situation, but maybe not. In which case, you are a masterful learner, and I'd like you to run the rest of this workshop, please. So, okay, let's give it another 15, 20 seconds to get your vote in. I see a little bit of a horse race here, but there are 4 that are sort of making their way to the front of the pack, but that could change. Maybe there's some mail-in ballots involved here. So let's have a, oh, and Mark, you put the code into the chat box. If there's a late arrival, you can get your cell phone registered by putting 37607 in the to box, sending a text, and Kim Marshall 346 in the message box. Wow, there are 81 people on the call now. That's great. Okay.
Kim Marshall, what did you say? Kim Marshall?
346. So it's those 2. Are you seeing it in the chat box too? Just so you can get your, so it's like you're sending a new text, 37607 in the to, and Kim Marshall 346 in the message. Hit send, and that will register your cell phone, and then you can vote on 4 of these by just sending a letter and hit send, and that will send that letter and get you into the poll here. Well, it's pretty decisive here that it's A. I'm going to circle these on my list. It's teacher evaluation, it's tests, and it's teacher accountability, which is actually the front runner right now, the issue of holding teachers accountable for their students' achievement. So those are the 4. And I don't think that's going to change drastically. Someone may appeal to the Supreme Court here, but I think it's actually too late for that. The justices have spoken. Oh, wow, now it's a dead tie between the last 2. Oh, edging ahead. I'm going to give it a little more time here. This is kind of fun to watch this coming in here. Okay, so pretty clear what the top 4 are. So let us move on here. And by the way, I'm going to save these slides and send them to Mark. So the first one is this idea of intelligence being fixed at birth. And we'll go in order, but the last one is probably the most of interest to everybody. So this is called the innate ability paradigm, which is very much part of American culture. This idea that you either have it or you don't have it. And Jeff Howard, my colleague, says that most Americans believe that kids are either VS, SS, or KD, very smart, sort of smart, or kind of dumb, and that is something that's inherited. And this is a belief that obviously goes against what SAM stands for and what a lot of us stand for and so forth. And taking it a bit further, there's something called the fundamental attribution error, which is when we see somebody who slips on a banana peel, we kind of think that person is a clumsy person versus that banana peel shouldn't have been on the street there. Or if you see a below-level kindergarten student coming into school not knowing their letters and numbers, there is a tendency of some people to think that's not a very smart kid, rather than that's a kid who just hasn't had certain experiences. So people who have this belief are not going to be very effective educators, because expectations are a big deal. So let me shock you with this chart here. I actually am the only person who's put this together. This is tracking different racial ethnic groups in Massachusetts in the years that the test, our big deal test, the MCAS, has been given. So in 1998, this was the racial achievement gap on one subject in one grade level. It's just, we're looking at that one subject there, which is grade 8 math. It's a pretty good test. And you can see that right out of the box, there was a racial gap. And then over the years, this is the percent proficient and above on the test. The Asian kids are up at the top here. Then there's the white kids, mixed other kids, American Indian, Native American, Black, and Hispanic. So you see a racial gap that actually got a little wider over the years. And you know what kind of conclusions some people are drawing from this. Here is just the advanced level, just level 4 on the MCAS, which is pretty hard. And you see an even more dramatic racial gap here. So a lot of people look at this and they draw the conclusion, okay, Asian kids are smarter at math. Turns out it actually has nothing to do with race. It has to do with a belief system that is deeply embedded in Asian culture. Confucian belief system, to see if this sounds a little familiar. All individuals are teachable and perfectible if we adhere to specific learning values: sincerity to engage in learning, concentration, diligence, perseverance, and endurance of hardship. That's a belief system a lot of people in this country say they have, but Asian kids internalize it culturally, and that is why they're doing better. There's no genetic component at all. It's a cultural component. And the person who's articulated this best in the US is Carol Dweck with her amazing book, Mindset. And really the idea that we got to get away from this fixed mindset, okay, which is the belief that it's, you either have it or you don't in math, to a growth mindset that your brain is like a muscle and you can actually develop your muscles. Now, there's been a lot of talk about this book, but how many educators has it actually gotten through to? Here's Jeff Howard, my college classmate. I mentioned him a moment ago, who has spent his entire 51 years of his professional life just putting the same message out, but focusing on students of color. Confidence, effort, development. Think you can, work hard, get smart. His Efficacy Institute, which I'm on the board of, has done an incredible job. And if you've ever seen Jeff present, he's one of the most charismatic people out there and has the powerful message that's similar to Carol Dweck's, focused more on this. And then there's Daniel Coyle and the Talent Code. If you haven't read this book, I highly recommend it. He studied very carefully instances of tremendous human achievement, whether it's Brazilians with soccer, whether it's a chess club in Czechoslovakia and others. And he found this consistent formula that explains extraordinary talent and seemingly natural talent, but actually there's a formula: ignition. Okay, there's got to be some motivation, something that makes the kid think, I can go to college, I can be a doctor, I can do this. Skillful teaching and coaching, and then a lot of practice, 10,000 hours, hard, sustained work at the outer limits of one's ability. So you've probably seen in Carol Dweck's book this wonderful montage here. A woman asked to draw herself, did this on the left here. At that point, she thinks, I have no talent, I can't draw. After 5 days of good teaching, she produces this, the same woman. This guy, look at his pathetic effort and then what he could do after 5 days. So just this idea that fixed intelligence is one we really, really have to get over. And again, kids with a fixed mindset, avoid challenges, give up easily, see effort as fruitless, don't deal with negative feedback at all well and feel threatened by the success of others. In fact, beat them up on the playground. And if you can shift a kid subject by subject, athletic event by athletic event, to a growth mindset, they embrace challenges, they persist in the face of setbacks, they see effort as a path to mastery, they learn from criticism, and they find lesson and inspiration in others. And just the way we talk to a kid about when they fail a test, when they succeed on a test, makes an enormous difference. It's kind of scary how our words can. And of course, it's not just book smarts. Okay, this kid's got this attitude here, isn't it? Doesn't decent human being part of this too? And indeed, Angela Duckworth and her message about grit, tenacity, curiosity, all these other aspects of learning are equally important for college and career success. And then there's Howard Gardner's 8 Intelligences. And this is a profile of somebody who I know quite well. And the average is in the middle here. This person is above average in visual spatial, below average in body kinesthetic, cannot dance to save his life, okay? And you see the mix of the others. And this person could actually learn how to dance with appropriate instruction, could actually, and a lot of effort and practice, could learn how to dance. So grab your cell phone. Let's get a quick sense here. What is the mindset of most of the students that you are working with? Just go ahead and just put in the letter and hit send. Just you're sending a text of just that letter on your cell phone. If you're a late arrival, go to the chat and you'll see how to get your cell phone texting working on this. So let's see what we got here. So far, only just 1 or 2 people with a fixed mindset, mostly fixed mindset, 22 people so far, about half and half, 20 people. And so this is an area, it's clear in your schools that you want to work on some more, especially when we're back in person. But even now, you can imbue this. Just again, the way teachers and parents and principals talk to kids about success and failure makes an enormous difference to their future achievement, to their belief system. This is getting into their heads, into their belief system. So look at this. And again, I'm going to save these graphs and I will send them to Mark so you have these slides afterward. Okay, so I'm going to skip ahead here because people voted clearly for teacher evaluation. So let me skip ahead on my slides here. Not that these others are not important, but this is a biggie, especially in my experience. So again, there is this strong belief that teacher evaluation does not make a difference and that it's sort of a waste of time. And here's one solution: just have teachers walk over hot coals, and we could evaluate teachers that way. But the union folks would have a problem with that. This union guys have a big problem with that. So the big problem with teacher evaluation, the big challenge, the reason it's so hard for principals is teachers teach an average of about 900 lessons a year. And if we're only seeing in the traditional method a couple of those, and especially if those are dog and pony shows, then we have a problem, Houston. And the good news is that a number of you are already using a different approach. And if you haven't, you've heard about it. Short, frequent, unannounced classroom visits, systematically sampling their work, face-to-face coaching conversations every single time, a brief narrative write-up, no scoring like New York City is doing, although they backed off it this year too. Checking in on teacher team meetings, using student surveys, student learning, always part of the conversation. And we'll get to that in the last one, using rubrics intelligently. And there's some districts around the country that are knocking this one out of the park, especially Hamilton County, Chattanooga, Tennessee has done a fantastic job on this, the Uncommon Charter Schools. There's 6 books that have been written about what I call mini observations, what some people call walkthroughs. Check out these books. Mine is in the top right-hand corner there. The one who started this all was Carolyn Downey, 3-minute classroom walkthrough. Paul Bamrick-Santoyo's book, and a number of others. There's a lot of writing and thinking about this. And basically what we're trying to accomplish in this, and I want to give some specific points about the COVID time, you're trying to accomplish quality assurance. So you can honestly say to a parent, to a school board member, to a reporter, to a kid, if you come to this school, you're going to get effective teaching virtually all the time. And I know because I'm in classrooms a lot. Everyone's going to get feedback from your very best teachers to your most struggling teachers. Constant feedback, like a basketball coach, just all the time. Motivating teachers to be on their A game every day. And everyone has bad moments, but if principals are in enough, teachers get used to this and they're not so defensive about in fact, they learn from their bad moments. And then making good personnel decisions, like, is this person worth another year, the struggling first-year teacher, or should we let them go? And so we got to have quality assurance, feedback, motivation, and personnel decisions, and manageable for supervisors. And I will say, if any of you are from the Chicago Public Schools, that Chicago Public Schools do have an extremely time-intensive traditional process which keeps principals out of classrooms. And I know there's some rethinking going on. I'm working with one of the areas in Chicago right now. So here is my list of things to think about this specific year. I've been working on this for the last few weeks as I work with principals. Every teacher should set some goals, specific goals for this year. And with many teachers, that's going to be mastering the technology, just getting with it on the technology. Getting 100% of your students attending. And if not, aggressive efforts to find those lost students. Because in the spring, we had a lot of lost students. The teachers I'm working with now are proudly proclaim, I've got 99%. I'm working on one person who doesn't have a Chromebook yet. Getting 100% of stuff. That's like the entering question with any teacher. How many of your kids are on there? And by the way, getting them to turn on their cameras is a huge issue right now. And there have been several articles recently in the Marshall Memo, suggestions on how to get kids to turn their cameras on. The third is frequent informal remote classroom visits, constantly getting in there. And just, you know, there's a barrier to this. And I was working with a principal the other day in a major metropolitan area in the Northeast, who was very surprised when she saw a kindergarten class the other day that wasn't going so well. And my question, you got to get in there more frequently, got to be aware of what's going on so you can do your coaching. Of course, looking for evidence and planning, looking for a balance of the synchronous and the asynchronous. This seems to be one of the trickiest things for teachers, is getting so there isn't too much synchronous, but there isn't too much time on their own. Certainly all class checking for understanding. And that's why I'm modeling poll everywhere. There's got to be some way of checking in with all the kids, and not just hand raising, but actually polling on comprehension questions and making sure the kids are with it. Always talking to the teacher afterward. To me, that is just a golden rule. You've got to have a conversation, which means only doing a couple of these a day, but getting around systematically, going through the staff, appreciating and praising, because so many teachers feel like this is their first year of teaching, just praising and looking for a leverage point, you know, a suggestion on one particular thing, but not overdoing it, okay, one thing at a time. Being in touch with families is critical, but not overwhelming them. Some families are overwhelmed, maybe having a point person for each grade level. Visiting teacher team meetings. And that's one of the coolest things that's happening this year, is teachers are discovering how to have remote meetings. And there's some of them are very substantive. So administrators drop in. And then I do believe in surveying students and parents, like, how's it going? This might be a good time of year, you know, if you haven't already done it, to do a quick survey and just see how things are going. So that's my 2 cents worth on what's unique about teacher. And obviously implicit in what I'm saying is dial back on the evaluation side and dial way up on the coaching side, make it predominantly coaching. Maybe at the end of the year, you'll have to get something in evaluative terms, but during the interim, just lots and lots of visits. And looking for, you know, just getting a daily reality by being unannounced, frequent, short, and systematic visits. You know, honing your eye so you're humble, curious, and low tech. Well, it's going to be some high tech, but low tech in how you work with teachers, just one-on-one conversations. Being perceptive, deciding on what's most important here. It's usually more than one thing, even in a 10-minute visit. And then keeping in mind the bigger picture here, including the trauma that some teachers are going through. Some teachers have lost relatives, have lost students, have lost, you know, colleagues. I know one educator in New York City who has 13 people in her immediate circle who have died. 13 people. So just, you know, the level of trauma is something that needs to be on your mind. Always a face-to-face conversation, ideally on Zoom. Being courageous and stepping up, because some people are not doing the job. Most people are, but some are not. And then some kind of quick documentation without scoring. I really would make a strong argument against numerical scoring at this point, just substantive feedback. So comparing one formal old-fashioned observation to a mini observation, which is 10 minutes in the classroom, 10-minute feedback chat, 10-minute short write-up, there's no comparison. You've got, you know, 8 points of contact, 8 visits, 8 conversations, 8 trust building. So just compared to the traditional, there's no comparison. And people have said it's like a keystone habit. So, you know, many observations done well, you know, improves the warning of problems. You coach and you get coached. You build relationships. You get to know the kids. You have empathy for the teachers. Fair and accurate evaluations at the end of the year. You build teamwork. You get teachers reflecting all the time, bringing their A game, comparing the lesson with the bigger picture, and cross-fertilizing, spreading good practices. Like, here's a teacher who's using clickers. Here's a teacher who's discovered how to use Nearpod. Get that teacher to help other teachers, because the wisdom is often right in your school. And then you're modeling leadership. You're walking the talk. Well, walking, you know, electronically. You're keeping good teachers. You don't want to lose those good people. And wow, do you have credibility with your stakeholders? So this is in my mind, a slam dunk. I've been thinking about this for a while, and I challenge you, if you haven't already done it, to really find your way to get much more frequent classroom visits. Okay, so the next one is, let me back off here, is tests. And I'm sorry we're not using better pedagogy here, but you got 40 minutes and then we'll have some talk time. So where's the next one? Where is it? Sorry. Tests do not enhance. Here we go, assessments. So here we go, okay. So Doug Reeves, pretty sardonic guy, had this to say about high stakes tests. Check out this quote. teachers usually get a good chuckle out of this one. They know what we're talking about. So there are three kinds of assessments. And the kind that Doug was talking about was the summative, big deal, it's all over, the grades in kind of test. But then there's interim or unit tests, benchmark tests, periodic tests, check-in tests. And then there's on the spot in the classroom tests. And the word formative is used somewhat confusingly for both the second and the third. And you got to kind of, because they're very, very different animals. So it's definitely, you have to watch how that word is used, because it can be confusing. But I believe that these three kinds of tests can be handled badly and can really hurt teachers and kids. But there are 9 ways in which they can be handled powerfully and actually be gap closing levers in our work. So the 3 big categories are: they can level the playing field to make sure all kids are getting a guaranteed and viable curriculum. They can improve learning in real time. And this is some of the most fascinating research, is formative on-the-spot assessments can be very powerful at improving teaching and learning right in their lesson. And then they can really be a lever for shifting the conversation in the school to results, always talking about student learning, which is really the thing. So to level the playing field, you got to prevent these gaps. I mean, a teacher should not have the right to decide whether or not to teach the Holocaust, whether or not to teach about Jim Crow, whether or not to teach algebra. Like these things have now been worked out on a national level. And tests are a way of making sure that they get taught at the correct grade level with the correct level of rigor. Fostering a growth mindset, we talked about that a few minutes ago, but absolutely the way we talk to kids about tests can trigger all of those negative beliefs about ourselves. So the way we talk to kids about tests can really foster a growth mindset. And tests are a way to get kids being their own tester, self-evaluating and increasingly through the grades, building their self-reliance so that when they get to college, when they get to the job, when they get to the military, they can actually monitor themselves and not be reliant on me giving orders all the time. So the most powerful engine here is in real time, spotting and fixing student learning struggles during the lesson. In a way, an exit ticket is too late. Checking for understanding of the whole class during a lesson and using good technology or any other method you can, and fixing the learning problems right then and there. Constantly getting kids retrieving their knowledge, because a lot of what is said to kids goes in ear and one out the other one. But if they are tested about it or test themselves about it, retrieve it from their brain. The brain research tells us that actually, it solidifies memory. And then getting kids teaching each other. They can all sometimes be the most powerful tutors in the room. So then the shifting the conversations to result has been very, very controversial. During the Obama administration, there was a big emphasis on using test scores to evaluate teachers. We now know that this is a really bad idea. And people have backed away from that, although some states are still doing it, but they'll get over it. But at the same time, Obama and Arnie Duncan had a good point, which is we should always be talking about, we taught it, but did they learn it? But there's ways of doing that right in the classroom, and with principals talking to teachers about actual observations and looking at graphic displays and actually having teacher team conversations about this that constantly bring up the issue of, okay, some of these kids didn't learn. So what are we doing about that? What's our strategy? Well, Leslie, I noticed that your kids did get this particular thing, or their writing did have this particular quality. What are you doing? And let's share that thing. And then principals constantly, when they're in classrooms, always also looking for learning. Like, is it working? Now let's talk about that. So here's one of my favorite quotes on this from a British researcher, Dylan William. When a teacher teaches, no matter how well he or she might design a lesson, what a child learns is unpredictable. Children do not always learn what we teach. That is why the most important assessment does not happen at the end of learning. It happens during the learning when there is still time to do something with the information. So there are ways of doing this. Cold calling, dry erase boards, clickers, all the tech things, or low tech, just fingers on the chest, exit tickets, all these ways of checking in and always checking to find out what's going on and constantly, so look at these dry erase boards here in this high school math class, super low tech. The teacher can scan the room and see that some kids actually didn't get it. And so the cool thing to do at that point is not just tell them the right answer or say, what were you thinking? It's to actually have them turn and talk to each other, find someone with a different answer and convince them. Like, that would be a good move there. Clickers, low tech, high tech. Kids rotate their QR code according to what they think, which of the 4 answers they think is the correct answer to this test that the teacher, question the teacher just asked. Teacher scans the room with a cell phone. Can't do this right now unless you're in person, but you can actually do it in other ways and actually see which kids got it wrong and what to do at that point. So Mike Rutherford, who's been a presenter at SAM conferences over the years, has this wonderful graphic. Teaching as effectively as one can, checking for understanding, checking with the whole class, and then making a good decision about what to do next. And in a remote situation, which many of you are in, this is particularly important, how the checking for understanding works, not just a show of hands, but actually some kind of electronic way of seeing how it's going at that point. By the way, this idea really came from W. Edwards Deming, who coached the Japanese on how to make better cars. So another poll question for you here. So how often do teachers that you work with make good use of on-the-spot assessments, like checking for understanding right in the classroom, just with your cell phone? Text in the letter that describes what you're seeing in your school in this crucial area of pedagogy. If you're a late arrival, look in the text in the chat, and you'll see how to get your cell phone geared up so you can send a text and take part in the votes that we're doing. So clearly some of you are really on this. And if you're reading the research, if you've been following in the Marshall Memo, I frequently have articles about this, is the research says that the teachers who check in and are nimble in responding to what kids are thinking during the lesson, they're the teachers who are getting the most dramatic results. It's not test prep. It's not a whole lot of other misconceptions. It's about constantly reframing and changing and improving teaching in real time based upon what the kids are actually learning in real time. I'm saving these graphs. So the last one is about teachers not being held accountable for results. So let me skip ahead to that one. And we just have time to do this, and then we can talk about this in the chat room. So again, in the Obama administration, there was this belief about using tests to evaluate teachers. And it was based upon this idea that if the teacher is really good, okay, we have a 4-point teacher evaluation scale. If the teacher is operating at a highly effective level or a distinguished level in the Danielson rubric, then wouldn't it be true that the kids would be doing terrific work on high stakes tests, right? Doesn't that make intuitive sense? And so wouldn't the graph of the relationship between teacher proficiency and student achievement be pretty linear, sort of pretty much like this? And that seems logical. And again, that led right down the road to, okay, well, let's use students' test scores to evaluate teachers. Because again, if the student is achieving highly, it's sort of actually a shortcut here. We can just assume, okay, that highest student achievement means the teacher is terrific. Well, okay, so some of you are shaking your heads here. And here's a rather negative cartoon, but check out this cartoon, what this cartoon is saying. I remember Andrew Cuomo, the governor of New York State, saying, how can this teacher be getting an A on her evaluation when the kids are failing on their work and you have F word posted on the bulletin board? How is that possible? And so this led, again, in New York and Tennessee and around the country to thinking, let's use the students' achievement to decide what the teacher's rating should be. And you see, again, you see the logic. It's not illogical, but this is what it really looks like in the real world. Okay, this is simulated, but this. So yes, indeed, the general trend, the line of best fit here would be, but a correlation between student achievement and teacher proficiency. But you have all these outliers. Like, look at this one up here. Okay, so this teacher got a terrible rating. Okay, got a 1 rating, but the kids are doing well. How is that possible? Well, maybe they chose their parents well. Maybe they got a lot of tutoring. Maybe the previous year's teacher was fantastic. Maybe they went to a test prep thing. Maybe they cheated. Those are possibilities, right? Okay, so it would be really a mistake to hold this teacher directly accountable for that student's high test score or low test score. Back here, we have a different outlier. Here, the teacher got a high rating, but the kids did terribly. Okay, so do we ding that teacher? For the low achievement of their students? Well, there are other possible reasons. Okay, maybe there was a dog barking outside the classroom, a classic distraction during a high stakes test. Maybe the kids actually made a lot of progress, but didn't quite get up to level 2. There are lots of other possibilities. So the research consensus is do not hold teachers accountable for high stakes tests. Like that's a huge mistake that was made around the country in the previous decade. ESSA has gotten us out of this. We don't have to do this anymore. But, and let me pivot here, but the conversation should be, oh, by the way, this is the value add formula for New York City used. Okay. And it's highly unreliable. I mean, it's 50, confidence interval is 53 in math and 50, okay. But again, it is possible to talk about student learning, the result of teaching, without making the high stakes testing. So here are 5 ways. During classroom visits, look over the kids' shoulders. Are they getting it? How's this going? Checking when you're in person, checking in with kids or polling kids. Are you getting it? Are you understanding? That's student learning, right? During the mini observation debrief, chatting with the teacher after the mini observation. Okay, let's talk about this. Let's look at the student work. Let's look at the exit tickets. Let's look at the evidence and so forth, and have a conversation about student learning. Okay, perfectly legitimate. Not evaluative, but right looking at student learning. Teachers meeting to analyze their results. Absolutely, drop in on team meetings. Teachers having frank, honest, candid conversations. Again, Mark, your kids really did well on that. Mine didn't. What did you do? Sharing good practices. Always looking at learning. Chatting with kids, okay, and doing surveys. And also, I love the idea of a teacher team doing a baseline assessment at the beginning of the year, working all year long, getting resources, problem solving, and then at the end of the year doing another assessment and actually presenting to the principal their team value add. Here's where they were at the beginning. Here's the progress we made. Aren't we great? And here's a really cool question that one assistant principal asks kids on a routine basis. What have you learned so far today that you didn't know yesterday? Isn't that a wonderful question? Now, when we're back in person, we'll be asking questions like that. So here are these 8 things. We've talked about 4 of them. Again, the positive message is intelligence and talent can be grown. We know this. All children can learn under the right conditions. Okay. Almost all teachers thrive in the right conditions and can grow. Principals can be instructional leaders. Absolutely. Teacher evaluation can be a powerful lever if it's done right. We should constantly listen to students' feedback all the way down to kindergarten. Okay, assessments done right are at the center of good teaching. Always have been, back to the days of Socrates. And teacher teams can take responsibility for student learning, and I think they should. So just looking at these, so if the negative beliefs, we got to give up, but with the positive beliefs, there really is. So let me leave you with one other thought. I hope that all educators this year are constantly jotting notes about what we're learning during the pandemic that that we can apply when we're back to normal. And I think we will be back to a new normal in September, in August and September. What are we learning this year about teacher team meetings, about IEPs, about parent meetings, about other things that we can really apply and that we will do differently, come the new normal. So let me stop sharing my screen here. And let's come back together. I think I'm right on time. Am I, Mark?
You are absolutely on time, Kim. I appreciate it. Can I get everybody to wave at Kim, give him a thumbs up, and maybe use the chat box to tell him thanks for this great session? Kim, I want to share with you that one principal I know who for years, a SAM principal, has tagged kids when they leave the building. And he says, I want to see your homework tomorrow morning when you come in. When he went to virtual, he continued doing that by sending them an email. I want to see your homework tomorrow morning. We're going to do a Zoom session. Here's the login. I want to see you. He does the same thing when he visits classrooms remotely. He'll tag a student and sit down with them separately by setting a time to meet with them, or even pulling them into a breakout session and say, talk to me about what you learned. And so it really impresses me, and I know you've talked about this before too, Kim, about how incredibly successful principals, SAMs, teachers, support staff, parents, kids have been in this remote environment. People have really looked at that idea of how can I make lemonade here? How can I make this work for kids? Because the principal PLE is still the same, and it's the same for principals PAL. How do you move performance forward of the adults you work with and the kids they're working with by extension? So it's really kind of cool to see what's been created, because people have really done some amazing work. Kim, I want to thank you again for doing this session. Anything else you'd like to share before we go to breakout rooms?
Well, sorry for the somewhat breathless quality of this. If anyone is curious about Poll Everywhere, the polling that I was using, I've actually worked through both for a PC and a Mac, this sort of step-by-step of using Poll Everywhere, which is it's not trivial, but it is doable. I can send you a 3-page sort of step-by-step to using Poll Everywhere. The advantage of Poll Everywhere over some of the others is you can integrate the questions right into a PowerPoint, the way you saw mine integrated. And you can also do word splashes, which we didn't do today, and you can have images. It's pretty powerful. So I highly recommend it. And if you want guidance on the step-by-step, I can send you, just a quick summary of that, or maybe I can send it to Mark and he can forward it.
We'll do just that, Kim. As everyone knows who's done a SAM Talks before, or the coffee breaks we do during the summer, Jim is going to compile not just the recording of today, but a lot of resources to go along with it. And we'll include what you're suggesting, Kim. We've done that once before, and people really gave us a lot of positive feedback. We'll also include some of the conference presentations Kim has done, a link so you can see that, because that's a great resource. And of course, we're going to include how you can get the Marshall Memo if you're not already receiving it. It's an incredible resource. Again, it's been great having you today, Kim. We're going to go to breakout rooms now. Breakout rooms will last about 20 minutes. And so you can talk about the conversation that we had today with Kim and what he shared with us. And you can also talk about other things too, if you'd like. Everyone, I want to wish you a wonderful break coming up. And again, congratulate you on what has been an incredibly successful year already. You've done great work and you should feel proud of it. And you know what? Your time track shows it. On your time track, you can see how frequent your time with teachers has been, whether or not you did what Kim said. Did you have that conversation when you saw someone teach? Or did you just say, well, I saw him teach, I'm done? And you can see that you've done that successfully, and that's gotta feel good. We're going to breakout rooms right now. Congratulations, everyone. Enjoy.